Welcome to the Journey Mindfulness Podcast, where we explore the depths of human experience. Today, I'm honored to have Chris O'Connor here with us, who is a near-death experiencer and has had a number of remarkable experiences in his lifetime. And we are happy to have him here. He is also the inventor of the Deems device, which we will talk about more as well. Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for asking me and the invitation. I appreciate that.
I've listened to a number of near-death experiences. I've had my own experiences with things. When I first heard your story, obviously it's a fascinating tale, but it's not a tale, it's your experience. It resonated very deeply in the things that you shared. You clearly have a very detailed knowingness of the world and the universe. And so I will give you the floor and ask questions as we go along. But where would you like to begin with your story?
Well, we can kind of begin anywhere. If you want me to talk about being off planet, I could do that, or I could go into NDE experience I had, whatever you'd like. We're good.
Okay. Well, your experiences didn't just start with your near-death experience. Is that correct?
No, no, but I've had several, one NDE and OBE, which is a out of body experience.
Yeah.
And I was in a coma for a while. So I've been separated from my body a couple of times or a few times here in this life. And so really what that did, each one of those experiences, they allowed me to see my life as something greater than what I was aware of at the time. Knowing that, okay, here I was 9 years old. I was drowning in a pool, and I was looking up through the bubbles in the water, and the sun was coming through, and I had already tried getting out, but my brain and I had given up about the fact that I was going to be able to get out. I'm like, okay, I'm going to die. And so as I'm sinking down, I'm looking up and the air is coming out of my lungs and these bubbles are floating up and the sunlight is shimmering through them. I suddenly became so incredibly peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, my last thought before I kind of faded out was how beautiful.
Yeah.
And then above that, I saw suddenly this form. It looked like they had to be floating horizontally above the water looking at me. So that's
Yeah.
possible. And then I just kind of faded out. But the last feelings and the last thoughts were how beautiful this is. That at first this experience of drowning was pretty terrifying for the first
Sure.
seconds. But then suddenly it was so beautiful and wonderful, it took away my fear of death.
Yeah, you sort of surrendered and had this acceptance of, and then this extraordinary felt sense of peace. And was it your guardian angel, do you think, or guide, or what do
I don't know because I couldn't, all the bubbles and everything. I
Yeah.
couldn't see a face really. I just saw, it looked like blonde hair and just a form just floating up there. I'm like, okay.
Now, did you leave the body at that time?
Not at that time. I didn't.
Okay.
I just kind of faded out and I went out, took in some water, and then that's kind of when my brain gave up entirely. And then I kind of passed out and then they pulled me out.
And you were about 9 years old at that time?
I think around 9, yeah.
So how did you make sense of that, or what did the people around you, how did they react to that experience?
It was funny because I was visiting a friend's house. So I think my sister was there and she was in the house. But it was not that big a deal. I'm in the moment, because I ended up being fine. So okay. And I've been through a number of these traumatic experiences and I've never taken them for the gravity of them, and not that wasn't aware of it, but I didn't internalize it. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I never have done is internalize those scenarios.
after that happened, did that open you up to other things with abilities or just things that you saw or experienced?
Well, I had always been, and still can, see, spirits or see beings, see entities that are outside of our frequency.
Mhm.
And that just was a part of my life. Even as a much younger child, I would be calling out to my parents at night and just like, there are people in my room. They're everywhere. And they're like, no, it's your imagination. Just go to sleep. So, of course, I didn't blame them for that because it's like, that's what you say to a kid, right? You're just imagining it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I always knew they were there. So I always had the ability to see and I could detect and I can empathically feel things around me.
Okay. So then going back, were you able to communicate with those spirits?
Well, at the very beginning, I didn't. It was scary. I was a kid,
Mhm.
a little kid. So for the first number of years, I didn't try to communicate with them because they would try to communicate with me. They would be in the room, and what I found out later was they were really there because they needed help.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I just didn't know why they were there. They weren't unkind. They weren't. There was nothing bad. Now I have had some negative visitors, and I have to send them on their way. But that was a process of learning. So at the beginning, I really didn't communicate with them. I do now, but
Yeah.
mm,
It's really interesting you say that. One of my last guests she calls herself a rescue medium and she helps spirits on the other side. That's what she
yeah.
focuses on. That's really fascinating.
Well, that's a wonderful thing to do, because sometimes that soul can't see those people that are there for them to help them. For
Hmm.
some reason, they're just unable to see it, and the rescue mediums do such a beautiful service, in helping them bridge that. So suddenly now they can see, who's there to be of assistance to them.
Yeah. So you can clearly see things. Do you call yourself a medium? I mean, clearly you've had different types of psychic type phenomenon.
Well, I really don't. I don't call myself.
Hmm.
Try not to call myself anything. Try not to
Okay.
label myself at all.
Fair
Uh,
enough.
yeah, but I do. I can do some telepathic work, and I certainly can do some communication work, and I just do that on the daily. Sometimes I help people with, kind of clearing some energies that shouldn't be hanging around them and
Sort of
stuff.
like a natural ability that you have.
Yeah. Well, because as you know, my experiences are pretty extensive and they don't, and most of them aren't on Earth. Some of them are my memories from past lives, and some of them are, from when I worked with, a space program, here on Earth. And
Mm.
so I got to meet a great many things. And then you begin to understand that a lot of what we see as entities, ghosts, and stuff such as that are really other entities from other dimensions or other places that come and attempt communication. Then that's stuff that I learned, and it's pretty fascinating.
When did that start? Because you had the NDE when you were 9, and I know you've had some other experiences you can touch on, but when did you open up to all of that, the other, if you
Yeah.
will?
Well, the stuff that I did, um, and I don't know how deep down the hole you want to go. I mean, I'll go as far
We
as you
can
want.
go as deep as you like.
Okay.
I'm
Um,
fascinated by your story.
okay. Well, basically, I was born in 1968, and in 1970, I was taken by the U.S. military, and They have technologies. They have so many more technologies than what they say, just because it's, stuff they've traded with other races. So they don't want to tell anybody yet. But I was right in the middle of it. And I was basically age advanced. They can rapidly grow tissue. And so they grew my body in just like, it was like 4 or 5 weeks. They grew me to like a mid 20s from a 2-year-old. And then there I am, a mid-20s body with a 2-year-old brain. Then they go in. There's these techniques of memory manipulation. They have the technology for that, and they basically unlocked my memories of past lives, of everything, and the fact that I had agreed to do this with them. So once I remembered all that, then I began working with the U.S. military, uh, the Navy and the Air Force.
So
And
this is what people call the secret space program.
yeah, it's a pretty good catch-all term. But yeah, and so they have ships. There's so many amazing things out there that people aren't aware of yet, and that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Is I want to be able to share that and say, well, you don't have to believe me, but this is, just hear this, be open-minded, because before too long, it's going to be much more public information.
For those that don't know, what do you talk about? Like, there's the story of President Eisenhower meeting with, I don't know, the Greys or the Nordics and coming to some type of agreement and sharing technology and that type of thing post World War II. Is that the genesis of this?
Um, Pretty much, but it really goes more a little earlier.
Okay.
We've all heard of the Roswell scenario. It's
Mhm.
not the only scenario, but those were not accidents. Those were an unkind race that crashed a couple of their own ships and letting the U.S. military think that they shot it down when they didn't. Then what they did was they went and collected it, and suddenly they're finding all this technology that the military is interested in. And so that was really the first contact for the most part. They've been around on Earth longer than modern humans. They've been visiting. So it's like that was just their first attempt to contact a world power. But then they came after that, and then they met, uh, forget which Air Force base in Southern California in the desert. They met with Eisenhower and tried to make a deal. Well, he was not interested because he didn't think Americans could handle it,
Mhm.
actually, then. And so he rejected them. Well, other factions of the military went behind his back and contacted them because they gave him a way to contact them. I don't know how that is. And so that's where what we call the Majestic 12 came in.
Mhm.
And they started trading information and technology in exchange for the permission to abduct 300,000 Americans. Well, they ended up abducting way more than that, and then they started fighting. And there's a number of things in our American history over the last less than 100 years that actually we think were accidents. Planes that went down, such as that, and that was actually alien attacks based on retribution because we started shooting at their ships.
Hmm. So like there's this secret warfare going on, and we
There
see some of
definitely
it.
was, yeah. So because they were like they they're not a kind race. They were lying and saying that they needed our genetic material to continue um their because they were dying off because they're all clones of one another. So that was their inroad. But really
What
they were just here to do other experiments on humans.
what is can you identify the race? Do you know, is it a number of races or is it
It's not a singular race, but it's a gray race, a race of alien grays. I don't remember which ones they were, which planet. I'm not great at remembering those kind of names,
okay?
but they were an alien gray race.
Okay, and they were involved in the secret space program, or kind of behind the group that abducted you or
Well,
enrolled you?
they had a presence for sure, and then later on, then other races came in. So technically, really, what it was is there was a reptilian race that sent the gray race.
Okay.
So that's who was really behind it. And then a couple of the Nordic races were also involved. They were more involved in Europe, like with Germany and Russia.
Okay. And then Germany, World War II, and then Operation Paperclip, and then that kind of transferred to the US.
Right. Yeah. Then we brought the German researchers and scientists here to the U.S. to continue, that research.
So when did you become aware of your involvement with that program, the secret space program, and at such a young age? When did that memory come back to you?
I always remembered parts, flashes of memory,
Okay.
like being in the tank and being drowned in this purple gel. And that's what they have to do to age, to grow, to rapidly grow you. Um, they have to drown you in this pink gel that's actually like a
Type of
DNA
like
type
a
of,
plasma?
sort of like a plasma. Yeah. It's like a pink purple gel. And then you have to be drowned in it, but it's highly oxygenated. So you're getting enough oxygen, but you're also kind of put out, like anesthetized, in a way,
Mhm.
so, I always remembered some flashes of those memories. And it just over the years, I've been able to bring other memories up, often through meditation or through emotional responses to things. I don't know why I'm having this response.
Yeah.
I seek into it and then I start putting those memories together like puzzle pieces.
So from a young age, they grow this body at a rapid rate. And then what was your mission, or what did you do?
Well, for the first 20 years, because they moved me to another timeline. And I know that sounds pretty wild, but once you have the technology, jumping timelines is easy. It's really easy. And they have that technology because time is a wave, and if you know how to timestamp it, you can move over to another line of time. So for the first 20 years, I uh, I was mostly on Earth. I worked under some what they call DUMBs, deep underground military bases.
Hmm.
And I was worked on the surface in a desert somewhere in a small military installation. Scott, I believe is probably Southwest America because it was desert and had, that look.
Yeah.
Um, so I did that, and then I also did some technician work. I was taught, and I had to go through courses too to kind of, learn how to do a number of things. And I actually did memory transference, memory deletion, and I kind of learned to do those things as well. So that was the first 20 years.
Is
Yeah,
that like the sort of Men in Black, like the device that wipes your memory, like that type of thing?
not exactly.
Okay.
A very quick uh,
Yeah.
explanation of that is in our pineal gland, we have calcite crystals, microscopic in our pineal gland, and in the CSF fluid, the cerebral spinal fluid, and there's fluid in that area, and it puts a hydraulic pressure on those calcite crystals. And then that creates a frequency or vibration, and that is your signature. That's your vibe. That's who you are, what your pineal gland is putting out. And so they have that when you're in the military on that level off planet, they know your frequency. So they can tune into your frequency and they can, delete memories. They can move your consciousness and soul to a copy of an exact DNA based copy of you. If something happens and you were killed, which happened to me, so they had to move me to a copy of myself. And so, but that's all based on the fact that the pineal gland puts out, it's just like a fingerprint. Nobody has the two fingerprints alike. Nobody has the same frequency. And so that's kind of how they base it. But all of our memories, our soul, our consciousness is all based in that area, in the pineal gland area.
So what happened to you that you said they had to transfer your consciousness that was it some type of combat or what?
Well, I was on a space station, just outside the rings of Saturn. It's on the moon of Mimas. That's actually a space station. I was there. I was doing work because there's the United Nations. We have an Earth embassy at that station. So I was doing work there and just not like ambassadorial type of work where, you're meeting with other races if there's a problem or a contract to work out or an issue. So I was there. It was pretty critical because there are some fleets and groups of humans that have left Earth that are not doing nice things. They'll kill and pillage and whatever if they need to. And so they visited this particular planet, and these individuals, they wanted to trade something. I think it was like crystals or something. So they made an offer, this fleet to these people of this planet to purchase whatever they're there to do, or trade. It's all about trade. And these people knew who this other group was, and they didn't want to work with the negative humans. Because they're part of the embassy, they're part of the station, and they're part of called the Confederation of Planets. And so they would kind of break protocol if they worked with them or traded with them. So they refused. Well, this group was really unhappy about that. So they ended up attacking them, took what they wanted anyway, and killed about 300,000 of them. And so I was there in a meeting. It was really critical. We were at some mining operation. Um, I don't remember where it was, but we were meeting in a meeting room, and these people were really upset, obviously, and they don't get emotional. They try to suppress their emotions, but when they do get emotional, it's extreme and very fast. So we're sitting there, and I believe I was saying something that was not what they wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I had somebody next to me, it was like an expert working with these particular people. And he was a really tall, huge man. And so he was like kind of a presence. And so we kind of had him there. And I actually know who he is. He lives in France. We actually were able to find one another. But so we're there in this meeting, and I'm sitting across like a boardroom, and this particular entity that looks similar to a gray, but they're much taller and more interesting looking actually.
Mm-hmm.
And he just suddenly like touched his chest or wiped his hand across it. I don't remember exactly. And then he did that, and this green beam came out of where like his heart would be, our heart, and hit me in the shoulder. And as soon as it hit me, it knocked me back out of my chair. And he meant to kill all three of us. But the second he hit me, he felt bad about what he had done. So he stopped. But it ended up killing me. And so I was immediately, security runs in, they grab me and they drag me out down the hall. I mean, it's my body at this point because I died right after I landed, after I fell back.
Okay.
But then they moved my consciousness because I always had copies of certain people, in case of an emergency like this. So, a lot
Like
of,
there's a copy of your consciousness, like a backup.
well, they were able to, pull the original out.
Okay.
Uh, but they have about 2 hours. If a body dies, they have about 2 hours because there's still residual electrical signals and such as that in the pineal. And so they're able to, put you into another body.
Like consciousness retrieval or soul retrieval or something.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And that's what I was doing earlier before I ever went to the space station. That's part of the work I was doing for the United States, on Earth.
So how does that come to an end? Like when you're, I don't know, service, your 20 years or however ends. What's that transition like?
Well, I ended up doing 60 years. And so every 20 years I renegotiated, my contract.
Okay.
And but when you're leaving the service, it, it kind of depends on the individual in some ways on how you got there. If you agreed to go, and you were a 25-year-old and you're in the military and they use you in the space program, then all they do is delete your memory, of your experience. And for me, they deleted all 60 years. You can't just like pick and choose memories. You have to delete like a time group. So like you can't delete a bad event during a day, but you can delete the whole day, you
Okay.
know. And so that's what they do. So people's memories are wiped, and then and with me, because I was taken at 2 years old and because I was moved to another timeline, then they had to put me back after 60 years into another 2-year-old body, which they had. They had copied, with the DNA and everything. And then they moved me back to 1970, and I was only gone for a few seconds.
So all of that, okay, because I was curious, like, how does that work? But so you're essentially gone in a moment and returned, and yet this time period has elapsed, and then you continue living your life with this deleted memory. However, you were able at some point to access them again.
Yeah, some of them, like I said, I always had some of the memories. But then once I started, it took a number of years to understand and to accept the fact that these are memories. These things really happened. I mean, there was one point in time I honestly thought that I had to be nuts. I mean, there's just no way. And that's the
Yeah.
end struggle, and so that's why a lot of people don't remember. There's many thousands of people that have been in this situation, many thousands.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a number of them, and certainly when you hear them, like like you're talking about it now, like there's a sincerity and authenticity about it that's like, okay, something is going on, and then all of this other sort of secret shadow government stuff that's happening with these, people know like Area 51 or something like that, but that there's this extensive underground base system that exists and is, shipping kids around for various things.
Yeah.
I don't claim to know all the details about it, but I have heard of that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody knows all the details because these things are so vast. There are so many things that we're just not privy to. And how I've been able to remember a lot of them, I think the only reason is because, I'm from a race, I'm not native human. Many of us are not native human, but we've come here and started the incarnation cycle and living on Earth to be of assistance, to help people. Because right now, humanity and the Earth is evolving in a way that our souls are going to, evolve, and we're going to be greater, more spiritual place here on Earth, and that's a critical time. So many races come and join in and become humans, and then our job is to remember who we are.
Mm.
And as long as we're able to start remembering who we are, we can be of assistance, and that's why we're here. But there are millions of people are not native to Earth.
Yeah, can you speak to that? Because this, are you referring to like sort of your pre-birth, pre-incarnation, time on a spaceship, like your starseed lineage, or I don't know. I know we want to be careful with labels, but your
Mhm.
origin, your star origin, maybe.
Well, I know I don't remember the name of the race I came from originally, but we're a very old race, and we're basically builders of suns. The easiest way to explain it is we can manipulate certain gases and materials, like these hot clouds where stars are born. We can go in there, add other elements, to create a certain type of sun. And for a certain type of sun. And what we haven't discovered yet is there are suns of many colors. I remember one being like a jade green. It's just gorgeous, and then of course we have ours is really technically kind of a blue-green color. It's just that we're predominantly white because of the mixture of photons. And that's why most stars seem white because of all of those colors mix up by the time they reach our eye. So we see them as white. But they're all kind of different colors, really, and some are pretty intense. So you see them as another color, like brown stars and red stars and some yellow. But there are other colors as well. So that's what my race has done is we were experts at, because if we wanted to create a solar system with certain types of life forms in it, then we would create that sun with those materials
Mm. So
to
like
support it.
builders, architects, engineers, kind of
Yeah,
setting the stage.
yeah, yeah. And so we also travel and assist. See, Earth is a special place, very special place. But it's special in a way that's because it's kind of tragic. It's special. And that's mainly because we've been so interfered with. And other highly negative races kind of were here before the benevolent races. So they were here doing all kinds of experiments on humans. And, we are the seventh incarnation of humanity. We've been
Okay.
started 6 other times.
Okay. So is this like the cycles that I've heard about, like
They're
or
related.
like different civilizations like Atlantis or any, Lemuria or other things that have come and gone?
Yeah. See, the Lemuria and Atlantis is from this cycle.
Okay.
So we were kind of human the way we are now.
Okay.
We were just a little different, like Lemuria was all the Native American races. That's where they're from, and some of the Russian groups in Japan. So that's that group. But then the Atlantean group in the east coast of the US and into the Atlantic was a mixture of races as well. But there were 2 different distinct types of reptilian that lived there. And then there were other, what we call modern humans as well. So that was a whole different, type of group.
Hmm.
So they started fighting and knocked each other out. But for the most part, there were 6 times, we were been manipulated by this reptilian group for, I don't know, 3 million years or longer.
So not the Anunnaki.
Well, part of the Anunnaki.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the reptilian races is hadrosaur based race, and they're the only intelligent life forms that started and evolved exclusively on Earth. So they're the only true Earthlings, but they're indifferent to humans. They don't really care much about us. Where the Anunnaki started developing us um, to create a modern type of human, but we kept, you know, populating, and then we would rebel and fight back. And so they would wipe us out and they'd start again. And this is the 7th time, but now there's no way they can, we have support from benevolent forces and the Confederation of Planets and, other federations as well.
So
So,
there's this intervention taking place now where we are evolving and moving forward.
yes, because in that process, it's sort of an unwritten rule that when a race evolves to the point where they can leave their planet, they can get in ships and they can go places, and then they have that spiritual backing as well. This is provided you're a positive race. Then you're obligated to go to other planets who are lower evolutionarily than you are. That's why we have so many, because there are many, many thousands of planets with intelligent groups, and they just travel around and help. They help other races, and so that's why Earth. Everybody knows that Earth has been highly interfered with, and we're a really difficult place to kind of live, because there's such a balance of negative and positive mixtures of people and souls here.
Hmm.
So it's kind of notorious throughout the galaxy that if you want to evolve your soul quickly, go incarnate on Earth. It's a
This
tough
is
place to
like
live.
speed school.
Yeah, it's boot camp.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've heard, I mean, obviously with the polarity and the way things are, all of this change is happening so quickly now, it seems like. And also I've heard that this is, the most interesting place to be. This is I sometimes look at it as it's like the Wild West of the universe.
Yeah,
It's just, and this is where you come to cut your teeth.
yeah. And now there's a risk in doing that though, because if you come in as a outside race or a star seed, whatever you want to call it, and you forget and you never do any kind of work to remember who you are, then you get stuck in the incarnation cycle of Earth until you remember. That may be a number of lifetimes. That's why I say what I say. It's like, okay, you don't have to believe me, just kind of hear me, and it might assist you, if wake you up,
Yeah.
at some point in your life.
Well, I mean, clearly I have an open mind and, I really appreciate you sharing this. What you talk about remembering and awakening, what might have been that point for you? And when did you remember your mission or what is your mission and why did you come here?
Well, I didn't really fully remember why I agreed to come here until just a few years ago. But I had like a Kundalini awakening. I had a whole spiritual thing happen. And through that process, many more memories came in. And I'm like, oh, it all makes sense now.
Was that
That's
through
why I
some
was
kind of
here.
meditation or
Well, through meditation, absolutely. A lot of memories would come in there because what we got to do is silence that analytical mind, right? And allow that subconscious mind, including memories, just float to the surface. So you're still thinking, but you're not analyzing what's coming in through meditation. And that's really, really helpful. And so I pulled a lot of memories or made sense of other memories as well. Because sometimes I have a memory, but I have no context, and it takes a little while for that context to come through.
yeah, had you already had your out of body experience by this point?
Yeah, my out of body experience, I was like 21, you know, uh, so I had already gone, in this lifetime, I'd already gone and came back, moved back in time, and then lived 21 years before I had my out of body experience, and that was just, I can tell you about it if you want. Um, I was actually,
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I mean, just briefly for the viewers
yeah,
to kind of share about that.
yeah, I was actually abducted. I was drugged. And I was abducted for it was like a week and a half or so, and I was actually continually drugged, injected with something, I don't know what, and you know, I was driven around in a limousine from house to house, and then when I wasn't doing whatever it was they wanted to do to me, um, they kept me in this room in some building. It was in the downtown of a major city, and so I had been over a week and I'm lying in bed, half drugged again. And I could hear two men on my left hand side talking, like right outside the door, with the door closed. They're talking what they were going to do with the body. You take me to the desert, bury me out there, dump me somewhere. So suddenly, after I heard that, I was no longer in my body. I was now standing at the foot of the bed, facing, looking at myself. And now I could still hear them talking, but now I heard them out of my right ear. So I was now facing the opposite direction, looking at myself. And then I just hear this voice that I know is not them. It
Yeah.
just says, "You have to get out of here." Or, I forget the exact words, but it was basically, "You must leave now," I think is what it was. And it was very strong. Now you must leave now. But I was still drugged. So the next thing I know, I'm back in my body, eyes closed, and then someone slapping me in the face. rapidly drumming on my face. I opened my eyes and there's this form, looks like a male, but it was just like a silhouette.
Yeah.
And they're slapping me on the face. And it was somebody trying to wake me up and bring me out of my drugged state. So that woke me up. And I was able to get out of there. And there was a window and I crawled down a fire escape. And then I was able to find an emergency room and, rest is history. So that was my out of body. I was only out of my body like 2 seconds, but it was a pretty interesting experience.
I would say still a profound experience. So this was before the Kundalini awakening.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Kundalini was like 10 to 15 years ago,
Okay.
somewhere around 2005 to 2010, somewhere in there.
Okay. And so you said you kind of only realized maybe like your mission or why you were here a few years ago. So after the Kundalini awakening.
Right. The Kundalini experience just opened vastness to me.
Okay.
And then I was able then to astral travel. I could go out and do things, and I would do that while I would be meditating. I would just leave the body and go visit different places and people. Oh,
Yeah.
so I was kind of having fun with it. But then in that process, I was receiving other visitors also. These new visitors, they weren't just like shadowed, like shadows or anything. They were full body aliens,
Okay.
all these different shapes and sizes. And it turns out these were all individuals that I knew from the space program, but I didn't remember that exactly then, and so through that process, they would come in and help me remember who they were, and then they were part of it.
Chris, were these beings like alien beings that you worked with, or were these humans that you worked with in their sort of star form?
I love the way you said that, humans in their star form. Um, no, they were entities and individuals that I was literally physically in
That
working
you
with
had
on these.
interacted with.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And
they,
so
but
they
they,
were assisting you in remembering this
yes,
experience.
yes. And so it just began like a floodgate of all these amazing memories that I had to accept the fact they were memories, and then once I accepted that they were memories and not just me making things up, then more came through. And then the context of things came through. And so it was like an epiphany where I began to understand all these random memories.
It had to be a lot to understand. I mean, like that you had experienced all that. How did you cope with all that?
I was amazed by it.
Yeah.
I was just like, wow, this is amazing. This is so interesting and cool.
So it
How
wasn't
did
this
this
negative
happen?
thing. It was like, oh my gosh, this really happened.
Yeah. Once I integrated that, everything just fell into place and I suddenly had peace because I was in turmoil for years, like, kind of tortured with these memories. And it was just, I was fighting them. And once I just accepted them and they all came in, I'm like, oh, then they all fit.
So
And
it's
they,
like, yeah, this key unlocked, like, okay, it all makes sense now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Wow.
pretty amazing actually.
Fair enough. Wow. So then at what point, what was the experience that led you to gain clarity on your mission?
I don't remember exactly the moment, but it was when I began. Uh, I always had like a resonance of I'm here to help, at some level. But then once I had all these memories, then they made sense to me. I'm like, oh. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, then the actual memory of meeting with the U.S. military representative before I was ever born. I was in another physical form, and we met with the U.S. military and made a plan. And then when that memory came through, then I'm like, oh, I remember now. I'm basically just here because I wanted to work, and I wanted to work with the United States or with the Earth through the United States on the MEMA station. That was my goal. But I couldn't do it as another race representing Earth. I had to be human. So I had to incarnate on Earth and be born on Earth. So that's the only thing, is because, there's a non-interference rule basically that's in place, that you can't, as another benevolent race, come in and interfere directly without permission of the Confederation or the Federation. You have to have permission.
Yeah.
The way around that is, if you are born as a human, so you move your soul into a human form, now you're part of the human race. And then your challenge is to remember that. And then your challenge is to figure out what your mission is. And now
Hmm.
you can interact and work and say whatever you want to say and do whatever you want to do, because you're technically a human being, you know.
When did that start? The order of non-interference, or do you
That's a
know?
question. It was, I think, about the same time as this modern human um, experience and experiment started. So it was after the other six races of humans were wiped out, and they weren't as modern as we are, because we're a mixture of like 22 different races, you know, off planet races. Um,
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people realize that, but we are this conglomeration of things. Yeah.
yeah, technically 23, if you include the XY chromosome, male, female. Other than that, all males and females are basically a mixture of 22 others. That made the modern human. It was a huge success. But that was um, probably 60, some 70,000 years ago, when this particular group of humans, there were still some others running around like Neanderthals, and, like the Sasquatch and the Bigfoot, they were already here. And so there was another group that they started, and this is before Atlantis was wiped out and Lemuria sank. And so I would say about that time is when the benevolent forces came in and they started building pyramids. Now, the reason for the pyramids was because what they needed to do is, because the Earth has a natural electromagnetic web net grid that's natural. That's what vortices are. Vortices are energy coming in and out of the Earth, and then so these are all connected ley lines,
Ley
such.
lines, yeah.
Well, they needed it to be stronger, so they started building pyramids to pull energy out of the Earth and send it up into the electromagnetic sphere, or
Okay, so to amplify the energy they can
amplify it.
use.
Then once they were able to do that, they were able to put an energy grid on it that a ship can't land here without, technically, without permission. Now, yeah, we do see ships all the time. Most of those are human, because we built many thousands of ships. United States alone, many, many, many thousands of ships we've built. So that's what we see a lot. But then there were other ships that are already here, so they were trapped on Earth. So, so the benevolent forces, the Confederation of Planets, came in and put basically a grid around the Earth, and not allowing some of these highly negative groups to come in force.
Okay, so protection.
Yeah. And we're still protected.
And so we're evolving in you. So getting back to your mission, you came here to what? To help this
But help.
awakening?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because part of this evolution of the soul of the individual is also part of the evolution of the whole race, human race. And we do that, we evolve, each of us, through information, through acceptance, through spiritual seeking, this is, the way it's basically done, because we're moving into a higher vibrational frequency where we're going to have different abilities as human beings. There are people that are developing, like I said, on our pineal gland, there are calcite crystals inside. We're going to begin developing little crystals on the outside. And I'm not talking about the fluoride stuff, that we, do need to kind of clean that out. But
Uh,
we will develop these other crystals, and that creates an antenna. So then we are highly connected to the cosmos and one another. So when that starts happening, people will probably freak out because there will be negative factions that say, oh, they're creating this in your brain. Well, yeah, no, we're evolving as a being, physical being, to be a more and greater spiritual being.
mhm.
So when that process starts, don't freak out.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, as I'm hearing you talk, like, there's mediums of varying abilities that can see things that, maybe I can't see or whatnot. But there's also, I've had people talk about sightings with UFOs where they're with a group of people and or several people in the group see it and other people don't. So it's almost like I I don't know if it's frequency or what, but some people are able to see things and some people can't.
Yeah. And it's not a judgment on anybody at all. It's just uh, sometimes it's not appropriate for some people to see things
Mhm.
for one reason or another. And it's not a judgment. It's just like they're either not ready for that or they're going to have another type of contact that best benefits them. So
Chris, one of the questions just popped into my head. Is the secret space program or what people know that is it benevolent?
it's like our military, it's like our government. There are factions on both sides. There are those that are there in charge, and they're generally, some of them are genuine, and they're wanting it to be for protection and for the service of the nation and the earth. But then within those factions, there are smaller groups and other people that are in it for themselves.
Right.
You know, and they end up playing themselves out, but you can't really call any of these groups one or the other. They're a mixture.
Okay, so there's white hats and black hats and a mixture of things. What
Yeah.
is with the genesis of the Space Force a few years ago? Like, how does that is that to welcome in the secret space program and to make it more widely known, or how does that how is that working out?
As best I know, it was basically it's existed for a lot longer, but it wasn't as organized or in an organized way. And it was basically part of disclosure, telling people, you know, this is what we've got going, get used to this term. And then later on, when we tell you, oh, wait, we've already had ships that can travel intergalactically, they won't freak.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly what when I first learned about the secret space program and then Space Force magically came out of into existence. I'm like, okay, they're setting the stage for this to come out, with disclosure. How do you see disclosure playing out? Do you have any insight into that? I mean, people toss out dates, to, 2026, 2027. When is the, spaceship going to land on the White House lawn or some variation of different things? Or what is your sort of take on disclosure? What does it mean to you?
Well, for the most part, all these benevolent races that are they're literally just waiting for us to get our
Yeah.
act, because they can't come and land on the White House lawn until the majority of people accept that they exist, because it would break free will. It would abridge free will of people that don't want to know. So those people that are stuck in the old kind of have to die off, and then it's a younger, more accepting thought pattern has to be in place. Not every single human, but the majority. people have to be able to accept it. And also, they're not going to land if we're going to shoot at them. You know,
Yeah.
look, we can't get along with one another. How do we expect to get along with another race? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at, right? Like where are we going to go? Are we going to keep repeating these patterns and programs of war and, destruction and fear, or are we going to evolve into a more open and loving
Yeah.
civilization and society where we truly do care about the well-being of one another?
Yeah. Yeah. They're just waiting for that. They literally are. The only way they would come in force is if somehow a negative force was able to penetrate the grid and come in. Then they would have to come in and balance it out and try to stop them. They would do that. Or if there was a cataclysm about to happen on Earth or just happened on Earth, they would all land and be of assistance. But we don't want to go that route.
I would prefer not, no.
No.
Yes. Um, you have had a number of remarkable experiences. Um, I didn't get into mine, but I have as well. I feel like I got to see the other side and know that. Um, but you don't have to have an NDE to experience certain things. What message would you give to those who haven't had an NDE but want to know maybe what that's like to maybe dispel some fear around that?
Wow, that's really good. Uh, because we're being met by people that love us in an NDE, that know us, and that are our guides and are communicating with us, whether we're aware of it or not. You know, those miraculous moments where something happened that you're like, that should not have happened. That's guidance. They're like helping you along in your life. And so know that you're not alone. There are beings that know more about you than you know about yourself, and that they are there to support you 100% all the time. You're never alone. Now, a lot of times we have visitations from things that are not as benevolent, but they're always monitored. And even though they might be frightening, it's usually being allowed for the growth of the soul. Because if you don't have little experiences that are a little scary, you don't become accustomed to the fact that there are other beings and entities. And that's what we have to do is we have to understand that none of this is random. You know, our lifetime, we choose our experiences and we choose some of the experiences that are uncomfortable to help wake us up.
Mm.
And so just know that you're fully protected no matter what at all times.
Yeah, those are very powerful words to share. Thank you. Um, Chris, would you mind sharing information on the Deems device and your inspiration and how that came to be with your invention?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually got it. I have one here. I got it from the space program. See, it looks a bit like an Ankh because this has been around for many thousands of years. So this is like a modern Ankh. Now, the Ankh was
The
used for healing, and
Okay, yeah.
it,
Because can
it,
you give a little history on the Ankh?
yeah, the Ankh basically was built the same way this is, and I'll tell you about that.
Okay.
Uh, and they were used to focus energy on the body. And they were used in meditation. They were used in physical healing of the body because within the Ankh, there were like copper tubes, really, and there was gold in them. Some of them were made of gold. This is 24 karat gold. Um, the Some of the others not, but and it was magnetite that would be placed in crystals and gemstones within the Ankhs, and that created a frequency. And so they would use it for pain relief. They would use them for healing the body. And so that's what the Ankhs were really for. And they were for focusing energy, and they could actually communicate telepathically using Ankhs and such as that. And so this is basically the same thing, but in a different form.
Okay. And how you said it came from the secret space program. So how did it come to be, or is it something you worked on or came across in your
Yeah,
work?
I literally worked with these in the SSP. Their versions are not as kind and loving as this version. Theirs are electronic and they're programmable with the computer. And like I said, each of our pineal glands have a frequency. They can program their device with your frequency, and they can erase your memory with them. This cannot do that because it's fully magnetic, only magnets, and it's all natural. And it has 8 carats of diamonds and beeswax and 14 magnets. It doesn't look highly magnetic, but it's super magnetic. And what this does is it creates a series there, this is split half in the middle inside, and then there's 13 magnets, and it creates a series. And it wants to come around and do this, right? That's the magnetic field wanting to do, like in the series of magnets. And then as it comes up, and it comes up and wants to go around and go back down, this magnet pushes it out. So as it's coming around, it's being pushed out also. And that creates a vortex. Now, that vortex of energy creates a 0 point on the end of the energy. And it also creates a piezoelectric energy, which is what our brain creates in the pineal gland. And then, and it's the signals of your brain, the synapses, the electrical signals, and then the signals through the nervous system are all piezoelectric energy, which is 100% natural energy created naturally. And you can create it through the compression of those calcite crystals. And you can also create it if you put pressure on or smash a quartz crystal, for example, you'll see a flash of energy. Well, you've created piezoelectric energy. And that's what our whole body, the electrical system of our body is piezoelectric. The other way you can create piezoelectric energy is if you force a magnet to go against its, what it wants to do. So for example, this is how it wants to rest. The magnetic field is this is what it wants to do. But I twist it and force it against and put it in that way. And that creates piezoelectric energy. So not only is it a vortex of highly magnetic energy, it's piezoelectric energy and perfectly, natural energy that interacts with the nervous system of the body extremely well. And then the reason for the 8 carats of microdiamonds inside is that diamonds focus the energy. They help as the magnetic field is being created. Then you have all these diamonds pushing it up and out, and it just makes it a stronger device. And then some of them I quote in 24 karat gold because the human body loves gold, and so that's why people that wear a lot of gold and diamonds and stuff tend to live longer. People used to say that women live longer than men because they don't work as hard, which such BS. But what it is women tend to wear more gold and jewelry and diamonds. So that's what this is, gold and diamonds, and it creates, it relieves pain because it interacts with the nervous system. Sometimes when you have an injury and you have pain because you have inflammation, this breaks it all down. People with arthritis, this is excellent for chronic pain. But it also helps to stimulate the cells in the nerves to repair and to grow and to heal. So that's what it is. It came from the space program. And I actually had to write and sign a contract with the space program, negotiating my last 20 years. And I told them, I want to release this device without you interfering, or without being in trouble or whatever, and because I want to release this to humanity because this is an amazing tool, So that's what it is. That's the Deems device.
Now, can it help activate the pineal gland?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the first things people do, because on the gold one, the gold side's the vortex side. So there's like a little tornado, vortex. There's another, this is nickel on this side. It's where the energy is going in. But Other devices are all nickel, so they have like a little red dot. So that would be the vortex side. So if you put like the vortex side, like right there, you can feel that energy going straight into your brain. You can do it
Okay.
anywhere, but this is one of the most sensitive places that
Yeah.
will feel it.
Okay.
Yeah. People that have
So that,
never felt energy flowing in their body, well, they have, but they didn't know what it was or they didn't
yeah,
pay attention to it. They'll hold this device, and what it does is it brings in a lot more energy, and they can feel their almost every single one person says, "Oh, it's coming through my feet and all the way up my body." I'm like, "Yeah, because you're drawing it out of the earth, which you do all the time anyway, but it's so subtle we don't notice it." Well, this just pulls a lot more in.
it's just
That also helps.
amplified
Yeah,
and you can feel it with
yeah,
greater.
yeah,
Wow.
and exactly. So, a lot of people, they like them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I believe you have a YouTube video, YouTube channel.
Yeah, I do. I have quite a few videos on there, but if there's one that explains this in much greater detail.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I'll link that in the show
yeah,
notes.
but they can search YouTube Divine Evolution 777 and they can find it, or, go through the link, or Chris O'Connor Deems. And then if you do Chris O'Connor Deems, that should pop up, so.
And is the website, is it deemsdevice.com or?
Um, well, there's several, but
Okay.
they all point to one place. So Deems Company or Deems Device will
Okay.
go to the same website.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Well, check it out. It looks like a very interesting tool. You talking about the energy in the pyramids and frequency and vibration. It looks like it's a great tool. When we talk about Nikola Tesla and frequency, vibration, and healing, there's a lot to that I think is untapped.
absolutely. It's all about energy,
Yeah.
frequency, vibration.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. When is the book coming out?
I keep asking myself that. It can be a little while still. I've gotten some writing, a lot of it written, but I've got to, then I have to have somebody else kind of go over it and just see another set of eyes and just try to tell it in a more comprehensive way. So I'm
Well,
just working on it.
looking forward to it.
Yeah,
And thank you again for sharing your time.
absolutely. Thank you for the invitation. Much love.
All right. Much love to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in today and being with us. May you find joy, flow, and adventure on your journey. And if you got something from it, please like, share, and subscribe and or comment. It means a lot. Thank you.